what I had in mind was the first that you've already mentioned, which is your joint work with Lavelle, where I think the non-content has to do with taboos, and then the other was in joint work with Mathew Stone, who we've also already mentioned. And I understand that the salient feature here of the slurs is their association to negative content, or well, it's not
Attitude,
their association to negative content.
associations,
It's
association.
negative associations.
And by
Right,
the
right.
way, I would point
So,
out to you that it's the first two combined because the words are prohibited. So what was missing in the first one was it was putting the cart before the horse. I said these words are prohibited and that causes pain. They said, well, yeah, but they're prohibited for a reason. The reason why they're prohibited. Well, now that period in the teens, I was saying they're prohibited because they have these bad associations. So when you token one of these words, right, you provoke all these associations, and they're painful. Some people, xenophobes love it, maybe perhaps. Ignorant people might love it. But people who don't want these terms to be used, they feel the pain immediately because they have all these negative associations. Much like uh, imagery or tokens. There's certain things, gestures with the hands, they're supposed to indicate certain kinds of uses of pejorative. They have pejorative tone to them, so on. So we're saying that same thing with words. Their associations bring up these bad feelings. So those are the two views. I can elaborate if you want, but that's pretty much it.
yeah, please. I would love to hear you elaborate on it, and then I would also like to hear why you eventually decided
Yeah.
to move away from them.
Well, I'll do both at once. So the reason why I was so the first one just says that people complained. They say, well, yeah, why were they prohibited? You have to tell someone why they're prohibited. And that's where the meaning comes in. I said, well, that has to be meaning. It could be associations. And that's what Mathew and I added. So we say the tokening of the word is a violation of prohibition. And the reason why it's prohibited is because it provokes you to think about these associations, which you don't want to think about. Remember I said to you that a lot of times you feel like you're being punched in the face. You don't have any control over that. Same thing when you hear a slur term, you're stung. You're like, whoa, I can't believe you just used that word. You know? And then Liz and others, one of the problems about writing about slurs is you want this thing because you want people to realize that there's something worthy of discussion here, that you want to explain this way. On the other hand, you're guilty. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, I'm going to sting you now, but it's okay. I'm allowed to sting you. Why? Well, because I'm a teacher, I'm an actor, I'm a foreigner, I'm a child, and so on. That doesn't get you off the hook automatically. You have to reason your way into that. You say, well, he didn't really know what he was saying, or he meant it to be just pedagogical. But a lot of people, like for example, Spike Lee, was really down on Quentin Tarantino's various films.
Right.
They're saying you're white. Because Tarantino said, wait a minute, you do the same thing. He said, I'm Spike Lee, I'm black. It's different. And then they say, what the hell's the difference? One's black, one's white, and so on. It made a difference in some way or other. So even though he was doing it for the sake of, or another example that people bring up is take, what's the film he made about? He made lots of those about racism, Spike Lee.
Django Unchained.
Yeah, take Django Unchained versus the one about Jackie Robinson. It was called 54 or something like that.
I think it was called Jackie Robinson.
No, it was the number he wore. The number he wore when he was with the Brooklyn Dodgers. I think it was 54, maybe. We'll look it up. Doesn't matter, though. But anyway, they asked you to compare these two. Well, the N-word was used in the Jackie Robinson film because they wanted you to see. It was shocking to me because it was the coach of the manager of the Philadelphia Phillies. You think that's north. That's not south. Cursing at him from one dugout to the other, saying, "Come on, Ed, get up the bat. We're going to kill you. You're a monster. We hate you. We've been sleeping with your children," and so on. Just horrific things. This is Philadelphia against New York. You think these are not like it's not like Alabama against New York. It's shocking to see what's going on. And apparently, all this really happened during Jack Robinson's first year in the pros. So you could say, I get that, but in the Quentin Tarantino case, you might say, well, it looks capricious. He didn't need to do that to make his point. So there are all these issues at play, So, but the question is why? Why are they at play? And the answer that Mathew and I offered is because of these associations.
Mm-hmm. So I was just going to ask, just to make sure that I'm on the same page, as opposed to, so since we've been using the N-word as an example, as opposed to saying it is bad because of the content. Because, I mean, the content, if the content is just black, it's not bad. When you combine these two non-content accounts, the idea is that the N-word is prohibited because of the negative
Yeah.
associations that the N-word has with slavery, subjugation,
Yes.
colonial, all these sorts of things.
Yes.
Okay.
Also, don't forget this. You got to remember that where we are in the dialectic. We're at a stage in the book where I allegedly have established that all the preceding views, all the content views, have failed. And the giant
Right.
argument, the big argument, there's individual arguments along the way against each account, but there's the overarching argument is the problem of hyper projection, which is that even out of quote marks, they project whatever it is about these slur terms that makes you feel bad when you're confronted by them. If you're not a xenophobe, they jump out at you even when you quote them, even when you're quoting them.
Right.
So that can't be content because the presumption is that when you use a quote, you freeze the content. Content's no longer in play.
Right. Interesting. I like this word hyperprojection. I haven't encountered
I
it
use that
before.
word. I created that word. And then what I mentioned.
Oh, well, thank you. It's a good word.
I think I took it off of church and hyper intentional. We're talking about church's account of Frege. The kind of the old examples that Burge endorses as well as he wondered whether a fortnight was 8 weeks. Was it fortnight was 2 weeks?
A fortnight's 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and because fort is 14, just like they used to use sennight for 7 nights for a week.
Okay. Anyway, getting back to where we were,
yeah,
I've gotten rid of all the meaning counts because the data survives quotation, and it also survives context. So I said, Liz, some people are uncomfortable here. So, for example, Mathew and Ernie, what helped me in collaborating with them was that they were two people that got really anxious if you even quoted a slur term. So they said, you can't quote. So I said, well, how are we going to talk about this topic? We can't quote them. We can't quote them. I mean, how are we going to get across to what our topic is? So, for example, I published a couple of articles. I don't know if you knew this, but I published a couple of articles in the New York Times about slur terms. And at one point, the editor of the New York Times wrote to me and said, now, Ernie, you do realize you cannot use the N-word. I said, I would never use the N-word. In my life, I've never used the N-word. They said, no, you can't use the N-word. I said, I know. I said, I would never use the N-word. They said, no, you can't use the expression, the N-word. I said, what? You can't use the description, the N-word. I said, why is that? He said, all canonical descriptions of slur terms are off limits in the New York Times. I said, well, how am I going to talk about this topic then? A word that begins with an N, ends with an R. I have this elaborate description. And it was very hard to write that piece. So I was under the guidelines. The rules have changed, by the way, as far as I could tell. At that point, this is in the aughts. I was writing for the Times. I wrote 2 or 3 pieces for the Times on this topic, New York Times. I was bound by this rule that I couldn't use any expression that was canonical for picking out the group. That was odd. But anyway, the accounts that I offered so far, the prohibitionist account and the prohibitionist plus association account, both those accounts can account for why even a quoted expression is bad because it's token. The expression has been token. It's inside a quote mark, but there it is. It's sitting right there. The word has been token.